Welcome to People Love Process. The hardest vector shapes to build in hand lettering, or any type of design for that matter, are the ones containing a lot of curves. So in this movie, we're going to focus on finessing Bezier curves and the handles that control them to shape and form, in this case, our lettering. So let's get started. Now, this project specifically, the theme of it was an exploratory that I did for an ad agency, and their client had a product called Flower Power Waffles, and this is kind of what they look like, and they wanted an ornate kind of logo type to help brand this product and be used on packaging. Where I started was doing a thumbnail sketch on my iPad. So this just shows a very crude thumbnail sketch. This is a lot bigger than what it actually was. I just pinch zoomed it so you could see it a lot closer than what it was drawn at. It was drawn pretty small. But the idea I had in mind is I kind of wanted these letters to flow together, but work as one total like word mark, if you will. I didn't want it to be all horizontal. That'd make it awkward to use, having it just one long sentence, Flower Power Waffles. So I decided to stack it. And I'm trying to get these letter forms to interplay. But this is one of the thumbnail sketches I did that I thought to myself, I think this is kind of the direction I want to go. Of course, I print this out, and then I go back to analog and I start drawing. So what I'm going to show you next is kind of how I work, where I work by drawing, tactile drawing, using a pencil. This pencil, I also use mono brand pencils, and I always use a white eraser, but the paper I specifically use is Nina paper, and it's a translucent stock. It's awesome. It works like tracing paper, but it's a lot more durable than tracing paper. You can erase on it multiple times, and it doesn't mar the surface. I also, as you can see here, I started with the word power first, and then I started drawing out flower, only to realize I ran out of space. My paper came to an end right about there, so you can see how I had to tape paper on. I do that all the time. I don't know why. I just start, I like something, I don't want to stop, so I just tape on and extend the paper and keep drawing. And that's why I use Scotch tape, because it's kind of a matte finish and you can draw on top of it, whether it's a pen or, well, not so great for a pen really, but for a pencil you can draw on it really easy. And then down below, I tried several iterations of waffles, and you can kind of see the sketch underneath the top sheet of my vellum paper here underneath. And I had drawn waffles out several ways, didn't like either of them, drew it out again on another overlay, and I like that. So I had to cut it out and again, tape it into place. So kind of an awkward way to work, but I've been doing it for decades and it works for me. So if you wanted to do this type of drawing, you could do it on an iPad. Maybe it's Procreate. You could manage it with layers. That's fine if that's the way you prefer to work. I like working in tactile, and so I do it this way still. Not to say I don't do digital. You're going to see some stuff I do using the iPad Pro and specifically Adobe Fresco in another movie. But I take this sketch and I scan it in on my flatbed scanner. Once again, I usually scan it in at 600 to 800 ppi, and I'll take that grayscale image in to Adobe Photoshop, and then I'll just adjust levels to turn it into a black and white piece of artwork like this. And this is where I'll analyze it. I thought this one looked a little skewed actually in my drawing, so I decided to make some adjustments. And so that's where I'll reproportion it, and you can see how it's not an overt change. It's just improving the structure of the letter forms. I think this looks a lot better. And it's at this point, I'll actually print it out again at the size I want to draw it in a refined fashion. And when I say refined, this is where I'll use my mechanical pencil. And I'll really pay attention to the forms I'm drawing out, because I'm trying to figure out how I want this to work before I ever get to vector. Not that I can't make changes once I get into vector building and create the letter forms with the Bezier curves. That's what you should do. You should art direct yourself in the entire creative process. And it might be almost done and you realize, you know what, something could look better. then I encourage you to go back and change it, or at least go back and try that and see if you like it better. That's how you develop your design sense, and you get that ability to critique your own work and see where it can be improved. So it's really important to do that. So we're going to go ahead and select this TIFF image. And again, I'm going to just adjust the opacity here to 15, lock the layer, and I usually build on a layer above it. And so we're going to build a few of these letter forms. Once again, the hardest letter forms to create are the ones with a lot of curves. And when you think of curves, you tend to think of letter forms like the letter S. This has all curves. There are no straight lines in it. So this is the one we're going to approach with vector building. And I'm going to use the magenta outline I normally do. Right now, it's at 5.5. I think that'll work good. And the principle of where to start, well, wherever your artwork comes to a point, gets a point. So we'll go right here and we'll start here. And if you think like a clock, it will help you discern. So we're going to go up to the 3 o'clock position, and all I'm going to do is click and pull out the handles. I'm not going to try to create the entire curve immediately. This is just how I start, the rough build, if you will. We'll go to a 12 o'clock position. You can also call these the tangents, because that's essentially what they are if you want to use geometric terminology. We'll put one at the 9 o'clock position. This will form the entire arch from the point going counterclockwise here. And then on this part of the S, do you remember what that part's called based off of the lettering lingo? I'll be honest with you, I can't even remember. That's why it's not important to remember all the lingo. If you want to, that's great. I tend to not remember them myself, but we're going to build that part of the S that I can't even remember what you call it. But all we're going to do is I usually go to about the midpoint here, and I'm going to pull the handles out. And all I'm doing is clicking and pulling with my mouse. If you use a Wacom, same principle. And we'll place that one. Then we're going to go into this curve. And once again, if you think in terms of a clock, it's going to make it easier. So I'm going to place one here, and this would be like a 3 o'clock position. We'll pull it out. Now, because this is such a small and shallow curve, if we go to the 9 o'clock, I think we'll be okay without having to put one down here. So the balance of placing anchor points is putting enough to get control of the path you want to create without putting too many anchor points, which makes it a lot harder to adjust. Then where it comes to a point, gets a point, that's easy. I think this one we can do without having a curve at 12 o'clock. We can just go to the 9 o'clock position here, and we'll just pull it out. Down at the bottom at 6. This is such a long path to the 3 o'clock. We definitely want to put one at a 6 o'clock position down here. And then we'll go over to the 3 again, pull that out. And then on this one, well, we'll try it without putting an anchor point midway. It might not work, but that's okay. We can always add an anchor point later if we need to. So we're going to go over here to about the 9 o'clock position on this curve. And again, if you really wanted to, you could put one here at 12 o'clock. That's fine. And then this is such a shallow curve. I think we can get away without having to put one here. So we're just going to close that shape. Now this is where we're going to go back and do a second round and start adjusting the Bezier curve. To do that natively in Illustrator, you'll use the anchor point tool, and if you hover over a path, it'll tell you when you're over a path, and it'll show you that readout. When that little node shows up that shows the 2 anchor points in the path, that means you can adjust this path by just grabbing it and pulling it. But notice what it does. It moves the next segment around. That's why I tend to not use this tool that much natively, because I've been using a plugin in Illustrator for a lot longer. So we'd have to go back and hold Shift down. By the way, if it's at an angle, if you hold Shift down and then grab it, it'll snap into 90-degree angles. So that's what you'd have to do to fix that if that tool moves it around. And then this is where we'll just finesse our Bezier curve handles. It's these arms sticking out from the anchor points. There's only 2 types of anchor points in Illustrator. Smooth anchor points, which this would be, and corner anchor points, which would be this one. And those are the two types. Now we'll pull these out, and you can see how it's a lot easier to get that curve. And to get access to the handle on both sides, you can just direct select the anchor point, and you can pull that out like that. We'll do this. We'll go here. I think on this one, we're just going to pull that out just a little to get access to this handle. And then we'll adjust that Bezier handle. Let's go ahead and adjust this one. And we're going to have to pull this one down. Yeah, I think we were able to pull that curve off nicely without having an anchor point right here. Technically, you probably do it on this one as well, but we'll go ahead and leave that one. I'm just going to pull this up just right about there. And if you ever think you have the anchor point in the wrong position, I usually pull it away. Then you can bring it back and reposition it. I think that might be a better location. We'll adjust that Bezier handle and that one. I think that looks good. Go back up, grab the anchor point tool just to get access to this one. I'm going to pull it out. And I'm also going to adjust this to get access to that handle. We'll take that. And I'll adjust, once again, I'm going to pull it away. Because sometimes it'll want to snap, especially if you have smart guides on. And that's where smart guides command you to turn it on, command you to turn it off. Right now, if I hover over an anchor point, you know, it doesn't do anything other than changes when you're right over it. But when I'm over a path, it doesn't do anything either. If you command U and I hover over a path, it'll tell you over a path, it'll tell you over an anchor. And that can be helpful at times because it'll want to snap to these things. When you're building vector art, to make it easier, you might want to disable that by hitting command U again. That way it won't want to snap when you don't want it to. So we're going to adjust this curve. We'll finesse the rest of this letter form S. We'll pull these down. Pull this over, maybe make that go up, and we'll get the bottom here like that. And this is where I'll deselect it and just analyze it if I think it's looking good. And I think up here, this looking a little flat up there, so I might adjust that like this. And this is a case where you might go down a little bit with the anchor. So it's not like once you place your anchors, you can't adjust them later. You really should. But I think that looks pretty good. So that's how I would approach building and finessing a letter form like S here. Now that I'm looking at it. See, I really obsess over this stuff. So I'm going to adjust this because I think it'll look better. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. So that's how I would build the letter form S. Let's do one more letter. We're going to do the letter L since it's a little unique in terms of its shape and how I go about creating this. And this is where I'll also show you a specific plugin I use other than the anchor point tool to doing adjustments. And wherever it comes to a point, gets a point. So that's easy. We'll start right here at the point. We're going to go into a 6 o'clock position. I'll go ahead and pull it out. Instead of putting anything here, I'm going to go all the way up to the apex of this curve at a 12 o'clock position, if you want to think like a clock, and pull that out. As it swoops down, this is such a long curve, we want to have one midway, but I'm going to place it right here so when I unite these shapes, it'll just consume it and you won't see this anchor point anymore because it won't be needed. So we'll go ahead and pull that out. It'll come down here to a base. We'll want a base anchor point there, and then it'll sweep into this curve. We don't need to put an anchor point here because we can make that with the Bezier handles when we do the second round of adjustments. We'll put one here to 3 o'clock. We'll go ahead and pull it out. Once again, down here at the base, and we'll pull it out. We're going to swing all the way up to the left. Think 9 o'clock position if you're thinking like a clock. And we'll go ahead and pull that out. We'll go to the apex of this curve, a 12 o'clock position, pull that out. And again, this one all the way down. We won't put any anchor point on this side. We'll go all the way down to this apex of the bottom part of the curve, a 6 o'clock position, if you will. Pull that out, and then we'll close the shape. So this looks a little wonky, but here, the reason why I work this way, it's so much easier to grab. In my case, I like using a plugin called PathScribe. It's part of VectorScribe by Astute Graphics, and this specific tool is called the PathScribe tool. And it does the same thing the anchor point tool does. It just existed about a long time before Illustrator decided to add it. So this will allow you to do the same thing where you can grab a path and you can move it like this. And at times, Illustrator will break these smooth anchor points. So notice this one's broken. And one nice thing about this tool is if I grab this and move it up, notice when the S appears, that says it's smooth again. It fixed it. And I let go and it's fixed. If we go down here to this one, you can see this one's broken. So with this PathScribe plugin, it can fix those things. So I just wanted to show you that really quick because that can be very helpful. Otherwise, the only way you can do it is you have to select the anchor point and go up here and click this, and then it might move the corresponding path on the other side. So it just makes the process go faster. Can you do elegant stuff with Illustrator out of the box? Of course you can. It'll just take you a little longer using the native tools. But notice on this one, on the top and the bottom, this is such a long curve, but I can pull it off just by adjusting the Bezier handles and pulling it out. Now I'm going to go ahead and focus on the curve on the left-hand side. We'll pull that up to form that. And on this one right here, we're going to pull this one down quite a bit because we need to start creating this. And this one's going to go over quite a bit too to form that curve that makes the front side, left side that is, of the L. I think we got this a little off in terms of location. I think that'd look better. We'll pull this down a little more, and I might even pull this over like that. So these are all the kind of what you'll want to look at. Now we'll go back to the PathScribe tool again, and when I select something, notice these nodes. These are those ghost handles I shared with you in a previous movie, and they're nice because I don't have to pull on a path to get access to a handle. I can just grab this and pull it, and it works. So that's really cool. You can still grab a path and move it like you would like this, and we can adjust that like this, or we can take this one, and it looks like I broke that too. So this is where I go back and I'd fix that. Then once it's fixed, I can adjust that Bezier curve like this. We'll take this ghost handle like that. And on this one, we'll adjust this Bezier curve. I'll pull this over. Maybe this one goes over just a little more like that. And I think this needs to go over just a little like that. Let's do this one. There we go. And I believe we got it all straight away. So that's how I go about building. You know, I finesse on these. I can't, if I think something could look better, let's do that. I think that's going to be better. And I think this one's a little low, so let's pull it up. And notice what I did. I like to pull it away, and then I bring it up like that, just so it's easier to make a visual comparison. So that's how I build a letter form like this. And like what I was saying earlier with this anchor point here, it's going to be consumed because ultimately we're going to select these and we're going to go to Pathfinder and go unite. And so that will be consumed. You won't see that. So that's what I meant by that. Now, of course, there's letter shapes like the O. These are the easiest because you can take a shape building tool like the ellipse tool, and we can do the center part here like this. I might even rotate it a little bit. And this is where I have smart guides on, so I turned off like that. And now I usually just make a clone of this shape, Command-C, Command-F. And then I just start adjusting it like this. I might bring it down here, use eyedropper to get the same weight. I might adjust it angle-wise then I can go ahead and just use the bounding box to skew it to fit my underlying sketch. But it doesn't even have to be a perfect oval, meaning it doesn't have to remain a perfect elliptical shape. If I wanted to, I could go in and just adjust these anchor points. Maybe I decide to move this one in a bit and adjust this curve over here. That's fine too. So those are the easiest of all shapes to create, would be the ones you use a shape building tool like the ellipse tool or the square tool to do those type of shapes. So that's how I fundamentally go about building all the letter forms. So when it's all said and done, I'd have my base vector shapes like this. Now I showed you previously how I took the letter L and I united it. So that's where I'd want to clean up all these shapes. I always save a copy of this stage because I always want to go back. If you look at this R, I want to combine these shapes, but it was easier to build them independently. So the tail here, or the once again, I don't remember the lingo, the top part of the R, and then the front part of the R. So all those are 4 different shapes, but ultimately they'll be selected and united together to form the shape. So think in shapes. Think of how you can approach a letter form and make it easier to build. Don't try to build everything with one path. That makes it a lot more difficult. So when it's all said and done, I have clean type like this. And this is where the fun part begins, where I can start doing color exploration. So these were the colors. They wanted it very vibrant and lively for this brand. And so this is where I'll select type like this. I use the eyedropper. And some people might wonder, why do you put these little squares out here and call them tonal families? Well, I used Macromedia freehand for 15 years, and you could pull swatches out of the swatches palette onto your desktop and you could tile them just like this. And it was easy to do color value comparisons. And so I still do that. I just do it manually because I like doing that. So all we're going to do here is select this type, and we're going to color it here. And I'm kind of keeping this, since it's flower power, I want the colors to be minimal. I don't want to have a lot of colors. So we're using the same color in the flower as we are in the word waffle. And that's kind of one of those associative things that I do because the waffles look like flowers. So in my thinking, it makes sense to have them colored the same way in the logo type. And then we'll apply green to here. So that's how I decided to color this. Now, at some point, as I'm going through the process, I'm looking at something and I might set it aside, come back to it later and decide, you know, I think it would look better if I had another flower. My original sketch had a flower in that O in the rough stage, but I decided at some point to remove it. Well, now I started second guessing myself because I think it would reinforce the concept better. So this is what I changed it to. And then as I was thinking about it, I'm going, well, waffles is nice. And I thought, maybe if I put a waffle texture. So I printed this out in black and white and drew on it. And I go, you know what? I think that might work, where it doesn't fill everything, but it just gives the illusion that that is representing, obviously, waffles. It says it. Why shouldn't it look the part? And so that's where I did that and added other accents to the artwork overall. And I really like how this came out. The client liked it. It works great on a dark colored background as well. I think this would make a brilliant shirt if they wanted to go to like a trade show and give these away. And I also took it and turned it into a one color that could be applied, in this case, to a pattern background. If you want to learn how to create the pattern shown in this example, I have 3 movies on my channel that cover the process to create unique, original pattern designs. So make sure to watch those. Don't be intimidated by free-flowing vector shapes, though. Take your time and think of the shapes, regardless of their form, like a clock. And that's going to help you discern the positioning of where to place your anchor points to form the vector object needed. I put a free chapter from my book, Vector Basic Training, in the exercise files that covers my Clockwork Method. So if you access that, I think it'll help you achieve a new level of craftsmanship in your work. It takes time to master elegant curves and finesse the Bezier handles that control them. But if you stick with it, you'll only get better, and eventually you'll be able to build any shape you need with confidence. Thank you to everyone who watches this channel, and I also appreciate the comments and questions you ask too. It gives me good ideas for future content. Thank you for watching People Love Process, and as always, I hope this content helps you to improve your own creative process.